Mine. Anthony had imagined fatherhood many times. Over 15 years, he'd imagined it hundreds of times. A tiny hand wrapped around his finger. A little girl calling him daddy. A son asking him impossible questions. Family dinners. Bedtime stories. School events. All the ordinary moments he'd convinced himself would never happen. What he had never imagined was standing across the street from his children while they had no idea who he was. The realization was torture. Pure torture. Anthony sat inside his vehicle staring through the academy gates. The DNA report rested beside him. He'd read it so many times the edges had begun to bend. Yet every time he looked at it, the result remained the same. 99.9999%. Daniel Hart. His son. Diana Hart. His daughter. Damien Hart. His son. His children. His. The word still felt unreal. Beautiful. Terrifying. Perfect. Painful. All at once. The school bell rang. Children poured into the courtyard. Parents gathered outside the gates. Teachers attempted to maintain order. Mostly failed. Anthony's pulse accelerated. Because suddenly he saw them. Daniel. Diana. Damien. His children. For the first time in his life, he wasn't looking at them with curiosity. He was looking at them as a father. And everything changed. There they are. The words escaped before he realized he'd spoken. His throat tightened. His vision blurred slightly. Damien was talking. Obviously. The child appeared physically incapable of silence. Daniel listened patiently. A miracle. Diana laughed. The sound carried across the courtyard. Anthony felt something crack inside him. Not painfully. Beautifully. Because somehow that laugh felt familiar. Like something he'd been missing his entire life. Then Damien tripped. Anthony's entire body reacted instantly. His hand shot toward the door handle. His heart stopped. His protective instincts exploded. For one terrifying second he nearly ran across the street. The way any father would. The way he should. The way he couldn't. Because Damien wasn't hurt. The little boy simply bounced back up and continued talking. As though gravity had personally failed to inconvenience him. Anthony laughed. Then immediately froze. Because he'd reacted without thinking. Like a parent. Like a father. Because he was one. A father. The word echoed through him again. This time stronger. More real. More impossible to ignore. His gaze shifted toward Daniel. The oldest. The thoughtful one. The observer. The boy who noticed everything. Anthony watched him help a younger student gather fallen books. Calmly. Patiently. Without being asked. Pride swelled unexpectedly inside his chest. His son. The realization nearly brought him to his knees. Then there was Diana. His little girl. Anthony had never allowed himself to imagine a daughter. The dream had hurt too much. Now here she was. Helping another child tie her shoe. Offering a hug. Smiling at everyone she passed. The sight destroyed him. Completely. Because she was so kind. So gentle. So beautiful. And he'd missed 6 years of it. 6 years of first words. First steps. First birthdays. First days of school. The grief hit suddenly. Violently. Anthony lowered his head. A broken sound escaped his throat. Because those moments were gone. Gone forever. No amount of money could buy them back. No apology could recover them. Someone had stolen them. A knock against his window startled him. Anthony looked up. His grandfather stood outside the vehicle. Anthony cursed softly. The old man opened the passenger door and climbed inside. Neither spoke for a moment. Then his grandfather noticed the tears. The DNA report. The children beyond the gates. Understanding dawned immediately. Oh. Anthony laughed bitterly. Just one word. One tiny word. Yet somehow it carried everything. Shock. Grief. Joy. Rage. Love. Loss. The old man picked up the report. Read it. Then sat very still. For a long time. Finally he looked up. His eyes shining. Those are my great-grandchildren. Anthony closed his eyes. The statement hit harder than anything else. Because it made everything real. Painfully real. Beautifully real. The old man's voice trembled. 15 years. Anthony nodded. Unable to speak. 15 years. This time his grandfather sounded furious. Not sad. Furious. The distinction mattered. Because Anthony wasn't the only victim. Someone had stolen 15 years from an entire family. The school gates opened. Children rushed toward waiting parents. Anthony's gaze immediately found the triplets. Found his children. Found the family he'd never known existed. Then he saw Daisy. The moment she appeared, all three children lit up. They ran toward her. Laughing. Talking. Competing for attention. She hugged them effortlessly. Naturally. Like she'd been doing it forever. Because she had. Anthony watched quietly. And something unexpected happened. His anger toward Daisy vanished completely. Every last trace. Because suddenly he understood something. She hadn't stolen his children. She had raised them. Loved them. Protected them. By herself. For 6 years. While he remained trapped inside a lie. The realization filled him with gratitude. And guilt. And admiration. All at once. As Daisy loaded the children into the car, Damien suddenly looked around. Scanning the street. Searching. Anthony froze. For one impossible second, their eyes met. Across the distance. Father and son. Neither moving. Neither speaking. Then Damien smiled. And waved. The exact same way he always did. The exact same way Anthony himself used to wave as a child. The sight nearly destroyed him. Slowly. Anthony lifted his hand. And waved back. This time not as a stranger. Not as the investment man. Not as Anthony Green. But as a father. A father who had finally found his children. And who was prepared to burn down every lie standing between them. The monster in the family. Anthony didn't go home. Not after seeing his children. Not after watching Daisy hug them. Not after realizing how much he had lost. Instead, he drove directly to Martha's apartment. It was nearly 9 o'clock at night when she opened the door. One look at his face told her everything. You know. Anthony nodded. His voice was hoarse. I know. For a moment neither spoke. Because there was nothing left to say about the DNA results. The truth had already spoken for itself. Daniel. Diana. Damien. His children. His family. His blood. The reality still felt unreal. Painfully unreal. Martha stepped aside. Anthony entered. The apartment looked exactly as he remembered. Small. Quiet. Secure. A place built around caution. The life of someone who had spent months fearing what she knew. Anthony sat. Then placed the DNA report on the table. Neither looked at it. Neither needed to. The numbers were burned into both their memories. What I need now. Anthony's voice hardened. Is names. Martha's expression changed immediately. Because she knew exactly what he meant. Not the children. Not Daisy. The people responsible. The people who had stolen 15 years. The people who had built his suffering. For several moments Martha remained silent. Then she stood. Walked toward a locked cabinet. Removed a file. A much thicker file. One she had never shown him before. Anthony immediately noticed something. Fear. Martha was afraid. Not of him. Of what was inside the file. The realization made his stomach tighten. She placed it on the table. Slowly. Carefully. As though handling a bomb. In the beginning. Her voice trembled slightly. I thought it was a clinic problem. Anthony listened. Then I thought it was corruption. She swallowed. Then I realized it was something worse. Anthony's jaw tightened. How much worse? Martha opened the file. The answer came immediately. Much worse. The first photographs showed doctors. Administrators. Laboratory supervisors. People Anthony didn't know. People who had altered records. People who had accepted money. People who had hidden evidence. His anger grew with every page. Then Martha reached the final section. And stopped. Her hands visibly shaking. No. The word escaped Anthony before he even looked. Because suddenly. Somehow. He already knew. Deep down. He already knew. Slowly, Martha turned the page. A familiar face stared back at him. Anthony froze. The world seemed to tilt. For several seconds he simply stared. Unable to process what he was seeing. Unable to breathe. Unable to think. Because the photograph belonged to one man. One person. One name. Victor Green. His grandfather's younger brother. The man who had practically helped raise him. The man who attended every family gathering. The man who had comforted him after his infertility diagnosis. The man who had looked him in the eyes for 15 years and lied. No. Anthony's voice cracked. The photograph blurred. He blinked. Then blinked again. The image remained unchanged. Victor Green. The signature beneath the financial records. Victor Green. The account transferring money. Victor Green. The individual requesting access to medical files. Victor Green. Again. And again. And again. Every road led back to him. The room became dangerously quiet. Martha didn't speak. She couldn't. Because Anthony looked shattered. Completely shattered. Not just betrayed. Destroyed. Because betrayal from an enemy hurt. But betrayal from family. That kind of wound reached deeper. Far deeper. Anthony suddenly stood. The chair crashed backward. Neither noticed. His breathing became uneven. His hands shook. His entire body trembled. Not from fear. From rage. Pure rage. Because memories were suddenly replaying themselves. Victor comforting him after doctor appointments. Victor telling him to focus on business instead of family. Victor convincing him that children weren't everything. Victor encouraging him to accept reality. Victor watching him suffer. For 15 years. Knowing the truth. The realization was unbearable. Why? The question came out broken. Barely audible. Martha looked away. Money. Anthony laughed. A terrible sound. A broken sound. A dangerous sound. Money. Of course. Always money. The Green family inheritance. The Green Empire. The shares. The control. Everything suddenly made sense. Victor hadn't wanted an heir. Victor hadn't wanted competition. Victor hadn't wanted Anthony to have children. So he'd taken away the possibility. Or at least he thought he had. For a long time, Anthony simply stood there. Silent. Motionless. Deadly calm. The kind of calm that frightened people. The kind that appeared before storms. Finally he spoke. "Does Daisy know?" Martha shook her head. "No." "The children?" "No." Anthony nodded slowly. "Good. Because they deserved better than this. Far better." He walked toward the window. Staring into the darkness beyond. Thinking about Daniel. Diana. Damien. Thinking about Daisy. Thinking about 15 stolen years. Then he made a decision. A dangerous one. An irreversible one. Slowly, he turned back toward Martha. His eyes had changed. The grief remained. The pain remained. But something else had appeared. Determination. Cold. Focused. Relentless. What happens next? Martha swallowed. Because she suddenly understood something. Anthony Green wasn't the victim anymore. The victim had died the moment he learned the truth. The man standing before her now was something else entirely. Something far more dangerous. And somewhere across the city, Victor Green slept peacefully. Completely unaware that the lie protecting him for 15 years had finally collapsed. Completely unaware that the son he had tried to destroy now knew everything. And the reckoning had begun. Her first. Anthony Green had spent 15 years waiting for answers. Now that he finally had them, he wanted to act. Immediately. He wanted to confront Victor. He wanted to destroy everyone involved. He wanted justice. Revenge. Answers. Everything. Yet one thought refused to leave him alone. Daisy. Before lawyers. Before investigations. Before family wars. There was Daisy. The woman who had raised his children alone. The woman who deserved the truth. The woman who had unknowingly become the mother of his children. She deserved to hear it from him. Not from the media. Not from investigators. Not from court documents. From him. The following morning, Anthony stood outside Hart Corporation. His stomach churned. An unfamiliar sensation. He negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking. Yet somehow the thought of speaking to Daisy terrified him. Because this wasn't business. This was personal. Painfully personal. One wrong word could destroy everything before it even began. Inside her office, Daisy nearly dropped her coffee when her assistant entered. "You have a visitor." Daisy looked up. "Who?" The assistant hesitated. "Anthony Green." The coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "Anthony Green. Here? Why?" 100 possibilities flashed through her mind. None of them good. Send him in. Her pulse accelerated. For reasons she couldn't explain. Several moments later, Anthony entered. The office suddenly felt smaller. Neither spoke immediately. Neither knew how. Because everything had changed. Only one of them knew it. For now. "Mr. Green." Daisy offered a polite smile. Anthony almost laughed. "Mr. Green." If only she knew. If only she knew he had spent half the night staring at photographs of her children. His children. Their children. The realization nearly knocked the breath from him. "You wanted to see me?" Daisy's voice pulled him back. Anthony nodded. Then immediately realized he had no idea where to begin. "Hello. I'm the biological father of your triplets." Probably wasn't ideal. Especially not for a first conversation. The silence stretched. Daisy's concern grew. "Is everything okay?" No. Nothing was okay. His entire life had exploded. But somehow he managed. I need to ask you something. She nodded. Okay. Anthony swallowed. His heartbeat thundered. Do you remember the fertility clinic? Everything changed. Instantly. Daisy's smile vanished. The room became quiet. Too quiet. Because that chapter of her life wasn't one she revisited often. Not anymore. Why? The question came cautiously. Carefully. Anthony took a breath. Then another. Then finally spoke. I think something happened there. Daisy's stomach tightened. Something in his tone frightened her. Not because he seemed dangerous. Because he seemed hurt. Deeply hurt. The kind of hurt people carried for years. What are you talking about? Anthony looked away briefly. Gathering strength. Gathering courage. Then he placed a folder on the desk. The same folder Martha had given him. The same folder that had shattered his world. Daisy stared at it. Confused. Uneasy. What is this? Anthony met her eyes. The emotion there startled her. Pain. Grief. Hope. All tangled together. The truth. Slowly, Daisy opened the folder. The first few pages made no sense. Medical reports. Clinic records. Transfer logs. Names. Dates. Numbers. Then she saw her own file. Her IVF records. Her donor records. Or what remained of them. Her confusion deepened. Anthony. His name felt strange on her tongue. What does this have to do with you? Anthony closed his eyes briefly. Because here it was. The moment. The one he'd been dreading. The one he'd been dreaming about. The one capable of changing both their lives forever. When he opened his eyes again, they were shining. Not with anger. With emotion. Raw. Unfiltered. Honest. Everything. Daisy frowned. Then he slid another document toward her. A DNA report. The DNA report. The one that had destroyed 15 years of lies. Her gaze dropped. Then froze. The words blurred. Her heart skipped. Then stopped. Then exploded. Because the report listed 3 names. Daniel Hart. Diana Hart. Damien Hart. And beneath them. Anthony Green. Probability of paternity. 99.9999%. The room disappeared. The world disappeared. Everything disappeared. Except those numbers. Except those names. Except the impossible truth staring back at her. No. The word escaped automatically. Anthony looked away. Because that had been his reaction too. No. Daisy stood abruptly. The chair toppled backward. Neither noticed. Her hands shook violently. This isn't possible. Anthony laughed softly. A broken laugh. I said the exact same thing. Tears filled Daisy's eyes. Confusion. Shock. Disbelief. Everything collided at once. The donor. The missing paperwork. The similarities. Daniel's observations. Damien's connection. Diana's trust. Anthony's attachment. Suddenly every piece fit together. Every single piece. And somehow that made everything worse. Because it meant it was true. It meant her children had a father. A real father. A living father. A father who had been robbed of them. Just as surely as they had been robbed of him. For several moments neither spoke. Neither could. Then Anthony finally whispered. I didn't know. The words broke her heart. Because she believed him. Completely. I would have been there. His voice cracked. I would have been there for every birthday. A tear slipped down his cheek. I would have been there for every first step. Another followed. I would have been there. The grief in his voice filled the room. And for the first time, Daisy truly understood something. She wasn't the only victim. Anthony had lost 6 years too. Not by choice. Not through neglect. Not through abandonment. Through theft. Someone had stolen his family. And now, everything was about to change. Our dad. Daisy didn't remember leaving the office. One moment she was staring at the DNA report. The next she was sitting in her car. Crying. Not from sadness. Not entirely. From shock. Because everything she believed she knew had changed. Anthony Green. The father of her children. Not a donor. Not a stranger. Not an anonymous file hidden in a clinic somewhere. A real man. A man who had spent 6 years unknowingly walking through the same city as his children. A man who had laughed with them. Played with them. Encouraged them. Without ever knowing why he felt drawn to them. The truth was almost too much to process. Back at home, the triplets immediately sensed something was wrong. Children always knew. Especially her children. Mom. Diana approached first. Naturally. The little girl always noticed emotions before anyone else. Are you okay? Daisy smiled. A weak smile. A shaky smile. I'm okay. Lie. Daniel narrowed his eyes. He knew it too. And Damien. Damien climbed onto the couch. Did somebody die? Daisy nearly choked. What? The boy shrugged. That's usually why grown-ups cry. Fair point. A terrible point. But a fair one. That evening, after dinner, Daisy sat alone in the garden. Thinking. Processing. Trying to figure out what happened next. Because this wasn't just her secret anymore. This belonged to the children too. They deserved the truth. Even if it terrified her. Even if it changed everything. Even if it broke her heart. Meanwhile, Anthony sat inside his penthouse. Holding a photograph. Not a business report. Not a contract. A photograph. One he'd secretly taken during sports day. The triplets stood together. Smiling. Happy. Beautiful. His children. Anthony traced their faces with his thumb. The action surprised even him. Then his gaze settled on Diana. His daughter. The word still felt miraculous. His daughter. His son. His son. His family. The family he'd been denied for 15 years. The family he intended to protect for the rest of his life. No matter what it cost. The following afternoon, Daisy called him. Anthony answered immediately. Too quickly. He didn't care. Daisy. Silence. Then. They deserve the truth. His heart stopped. Because he knew exactly who she meant. The children. Their children. I know. Another pause. Long. Emotional. Painful. I'm scared. Anthony closed his eyes. So was he. Terrified. Not of boardrooms. Not of Victor. Not of scandal. Of 3 small children. 3 children whose acceptance suddenly mattered more than anything else. We'll tell them together. The words escaped before he could stop them. Daisy didn't answer immediately. Then finally. Together. Anthony smiled. The first genuine smile he'd worn all day. Saturday arrived far too quickly. The triplets sat around the dining table. Busy drawing. Arguing. Being children. Completely unaware their lives were about to change forever. Anthony stood outside the front door. Frozen. Absolutely frozen. For the first time in years, Anthony Green was afraid. Not nervous. Afraid. Because billion-dollar deals couldn't reject him. Children could. The thought nearly made him leave. Then the door opened. Daisy stood there. She looked just as nervous. Just as emotional. Just as terrified. For a moment neither spoke. Then she nodded. A small nod. A brave nod. Ready. Or at least as ready as they'd ever be. Inside the house, Damien looked up first. Investment men. Anthony laughed despite himself. The familiar greeting eased some of the tension. Some. Not all. Daniel noticed the seriousness immediately. Diana did too. The children exchanged glances. Something was different. Something important. Can you sit down for a minute? Daisy asked softly. The triplets obeyed. Curiosity replacing excitement. Anthony sat across from them. His pulse hammered. His throat felt tight. The room suddenly seemed too small. Too warm. Too quiet. Daniel spoke first. What happened? Of course he did. The boy always went straight to the point. Daisy reached for Anthony's hand. The gesture surprised both of them. Yet neither pulled away. The children noticed. Immediately. Their confusion deepened. There's something we need to tell you. Daisy's voice trembled. The triplets listened carefully. And then she said the words. The words that changed everything. You know how you've always asked about your father? 3 heads nodded instantly. Anthony felt his heartbeat stop. Daisy looked at him. Then back at the children. Tears filled her eyes. A smile followed. And finally. He's here. Silence. Absolute silence. The triplets froze. Anthony froze. Even time seemed to freeze. Then 3 pairs of eyes slowly turned toward him. And the world held its breath. Dad. Silence. Complete silence. The triplets stared at Anthony. Anthony stared back. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody seemed capable of breathing. The moment felt frozen. Like the entire world had stopped turning. Daisy's heart hammered painfully inside her chest. This was it. The moment she'd dreaded. The moment she'd hoped for. The moment that would change all their lives forever. Daniel was the first to react. Of course he was. The little boy looked from Daisy to Anthony. Then back to Daisy. His sharp mind immediately began connecting pieces. The Father's Day event. The similarities. The strange attachment. The way Anthony always looked at them. The way Damien looked like him. The way everyone had avoided answering questions. Suddenly everything made sense. Every single piece. His eyes widened. Slowly. Shockingly. You mean? His voice barely worked. Anthony felt his throat tighten. Daisy nodded softly. Yes. Daniel's mouth fell open. The little boy who always had answers suddenly had none. Diana started crying first. Not loud crying. Not dramatic crying. Just quiet tears sliding down her cheeks. The kind that shattered hearts. Anthony immediately panicked. Oh God. He looked at Daisy. Then back at Diana. Terrified. I didn't mean. The little girl suddenly stood. Then ran. Straight toward him. Anthony's heart stopped. For one impossible second, he thought she was running away. Instead, she threw her arms around him. And hugged him. Hard. The force nearly knocked the breath from his lungs. I knew it. Anthony froze. What? Diana sniffled. Still clinging to him. I knew you were important. The words destroyed him. Completely. Instantly. His arms wrapped around her automatically. Protectively. Naturally. As though he'd been doing it her entire life. Maybe because he should have been. Then came Damien. The boy stared suspiciously. Very suspiciously. Anthony immediately became nervous. Damien. The little boy pointed. Directly at him. You mean? Anthony nodded. The silence stretched. Then Damien asked the most Damien question possible. Does this mean I inherit your money? The room exploded. Daisy laughed. Daniel laughed. Even Diana giggled through her tears. Anthony laughed so hard tears filled his eyes. The tension shattered instantly. Because of course that would be Damien's first concern. Of course. That's what you're thinking about. Daniel sounded horrified. Damien shrugged. It's an important question. It isn't. It absolutely is. Anthony wiped tears from his eyes. The little menace was definitely his son. No DNA test required. Then Damien's smile slowly faded. For the first time all day. For the first time maybe ever. The little boy looked down. Then quietly asked. You're really our dad? The innocence in his voice hurt. A lot. Anthony swallowed. His vision blurred. Yes. Damien stared at him. Studying him. Evaluating him. Like a tiny lawyer. Then another question. One much harder. Why weren't you here? The room fell silent again. Painful silence. Heavy silence. Anthony felt his chest tighten. Because the answer was complicated. Ugly. Cruel. Yet the truth remained simple. I didn't know. His voice cracked. The words felt inadequate. Pathetic. Small. Compared to 6 years of absence. I didn't know you existed. Damien's eyes widened. Anthony forced himself to continue. Someone lied to me. The little boy listened carefully. Anthony fought to maintain composure. I spent a very long time believing I couldn't have children. A tear escaped despite his efforts. I would have come. His voice broke completely. I would have been there. The room blurred. Everything blurred. Because suddenly he wasn't talking only to Damien. He was talking to all three of them. Every birthday. Every Christmas. Every first step. Every bedtime story. Every scraped knee. Every moment. I would have been there. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel stood. The thoughtful one. The careful one. The observer. Slowly, he walked across the room. Then wrapped his arms around Anthony too. Anthony completely lost the battle. The tears came freely now. Unstoppable. Because his son was hugging him. His son. The words still felt impossible. A second later Diana joined them. Then Damien. The little boy tried to look cool about it. Failed immediately. Within moments all three children surrounded him. Anthony laughed and cried at the same time. Unable to stop either. Unable to believe any of it was real. Across the room, Daisy wiped away tears. Her own heart felt painfully full. Because for the first time, the missing piece was no longer missing. The children weren't asking questions anymore. They weren't wondering anymore. They weren't searching anymore. They had found him. And somehow, he had found them too. Several minutes later, Damien looked up. Still sitting on Anthony's lap. Apparently he'd claimed it permanently. The little boy frowned thoughtfully. Then asked. So what do we call you? Anthony smiled. His heart pounding. His entire world hanging on the answer. The room became quiet. Even Daisy stopped breathing. Then Diana whispered it first. Tentatively. Softly. As though testing the word. Dad. Anthony closed his eyes. A broken sound escaped him. Half laugh. Half sob. Entirely love. Because after 15 years. After lies. After loss. After loneliness. After everything. He had finally heard the word he dreamed about. Dad. And in that moment, Anthony Green knew something with absolute certainty. No power on earth would ever take his children away from him again. The first weekend. Anthony Green had survived hostile takeovers. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals. He had stared down powerful rivals and won. None of those experiences prepared him for 3 children arriving at his penthouse on a Saturday morning. Dad. The shout echoed through the lobby. Anthony's heart nearly burst. It had been a week since the truth came out. A week since he had first heard the word. A week since his world changed forever. And somehow it still felt unreal. Dad. The title hit him every single time. Like a miracle. Like a dream. Like something he was afraid to wake up from. The elevator doors opened. 3 small tornadoes rushed toward him. Diana got there first. She launched herself directly into his arms. Anthony caught her automatically. As though he'd been doing it forever. Daddy. His heart melted instantly. Completely. Hopelessly. He hugged her tightly. Hi, Princess. The nickname slipped out naturally. Diana beamed. Anthony immediately realized he would do absolutely anything this child asked. Anything. A dangerous realization. Daniel arrived next. More composed. More reserved. Yet his smile was genuine. Anthony knelt. Opening his arms. For a brief second Daniel hesitated. Then stepped forward. Anthony hugged him carefully. The little boy hugged back. Not as tightly as Diana. Not as dramatically. But it mattered just as much. Maybe more. Because Daniel trusted slowly. And every bit of that trust felt precious. Hi, buddy. Daniel smiled. Hi, Dad. Anthony nearly lost it again. Every time. Every single time. Then came Damien. The chaos himself. The little boy stopped directly in front of Anthony. Hands on hips. Expression serious. Very serious. Anthony immediately became suspicious. What? Damien nodded. Slowly. I've been thinking. Dangerous. Extremely dangerous. Anthony already regretted asking. Okay. The little boy pointed toward the penthouse. Since you're my dad now. Anthony braced himself. I think I should have my own office. Silence. Then Diana burst out laughing. Daniel covered his face. Daisy closed her eyes. Anthony laughed so hard he nearly dropped Diana. Of course. Of course Damien's first concern involved office space. Minutes later, the family entered the penthouse. The children immediately froze. Wide-eyed. Speechless. For approximately 5 seconds. Then all chaos broke loose. Dad has a pool. Dad has a movie room. Dad has a game room. Dad has a huge TV. Anthony smiled. Watching them explore. Watching them laugh. Watching them turn his silent home into something alive. For years the penthouse had felt empty. Now it felt too small. And he loved it. Daisy stood beside him. Quietly observing. A smile touched her lips. The children looked happy. Really happy. And Anthony. Anthony looked like a man discovering sunlight after years underground. The difference was impossible to miss. "Thank you." The words escaped before she could stop them. Anthony looked at her. Confused. For what? Daisy glanced toward the children. For a moment emotion filled her eyes. "You're trying." Anthony's expression softened. Immediately. "Daisy." His voice grew quiet. Gentle. "I don't have to try." Their eyes met. And for a moment neither looked away. Because the truth was simple. Anthony didn't have to force any of this. Didn't have to pretend. Didn't have to learn how to love the triplets. He already did. Completely. A loud crash interrupted the moment. The adults spun around. Instantly. Damien. The little boy stood beside a broken decorative vase. Frozen. Caught. Guilty. Very guilty. Anthony stared. Damien stared back. The room held its breath. Then the little boy smiled weakly. "It attacked me first." Daisy groaned. Daniel sighed. Diana laughed. Anthony burst out laughing. A real laugh. The kind that came from deep inside. The kind he hadn't experienced in years. And watching him, Daisy realized something. The penthouse wasn't changing because the children were visiting. The penthouse was changing because it finally had a family. Later that night, after swimming, games, snacks, and approximately 14 near disasters caused by Damien, the triplets sat curled up beside Anthony on the giant couch. A movie played softly. Diana leaned against his shoulder. Daniel rested beside him. Damien had somehow claimed his lap. Permanently. Anthony didn't complain. Not once. Because for 15 years he had dreamed about moments like this. Ordinary moments. Simple moments. Family moments. The kind people often took for granted. He never would. Never again. As the children slowly drifted towards sleep, Anthony looked around the room. At his children. At Daisy. At the life he'd almost lost forever. And silently made himself a promise. No matter what happened next. No matter who stood in his way. No matter how ugly the coming battle became. He would protect this family. With everything he had. The war against Victor Green was coming. But tonight. Tonight belonged to his children. And for the first time in 15 years. Anthony Green finally felt at home. 6 years of memories. The triplets spent the night. Not because it had been planned. Because nobody wanted to leave. Especially Anthony. And definitely not Diana. "Daddy, 5 more minutes." It was 11 o'clock. Anthony looked at the little girl currently wrapped in a blanket. Then looked at Daisy. Then looked back at Diana. "I think she's negotiating." Diana smiled. Proudly. "Yes." Anthony laughed. Daisy groaned. "She's learning from Damien." "Hey." Damien looked offended. "I am a businessman." Anthony nearly choked on his coffee. The child was impossible. The following morning brought something Anthony had secretly wanted for days. More time. Just time. Nothing dramatic. Nothing complicated. Just his family. The word still felt new. His family. After breakfast, Daisy carried several large boxes into the living room. Anthony frowned. "What's that?" A smile appeared on her face. A sad smile. A beautiful smile. 6 years. Anthony froze. Immediately. Because he knew. The boxes contained memories. Thousands of them. Photographs. Videos. Drawings. School projects. Birthday invitations. Report cards. Everything. 6 years of childhood. 6 years he had never seen. 6 years he could never get back. Diana climbed onto the couch beside him. Excited. We were tiny. Anthony smiled. I heard. No. Damien shook his head dramatically. You don't understand. The little boy held up a photograph. Anthony stared. Then laughed. Because Damien looked ridiculous. A chubby toddler. Covered in cake. Looking completely innocent. A blatant lie. The child had never been innocent. Not once. Look. Daniel carefully handed Anthony another photograph. The moment Anthony saw it, his smile disappeared. A tiny boy. Maybe 1 year old. Standing while gripping a coffee table. First steps. His son's first steps. Anthony stared. Unable to move. Unable to speak. Because he wasn't there. The realization hit harder than expected. Much harder. Daisy noticed immediately. The sadness. The grief. The pain. Quietly, she sat beside him. Not speaking. Just sitting. Anthony appreciated it more than she knew. Because sometimes there were no words. Only loss. Only memories. Only moments that could never be recovered. Then came the videos. The first birthday. The second. The third. Christmas mornings. School plays. Family trips. Anthony watched every second. Every single second. Refusing to look away. Even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. Because these moments belonged to his children. And he wanted all of them. The good. The bad. The beautiful. The painful. Everything. Then a video appeared. Diana. 4 years old. Sitting on a swing. The little girl looked directly at the camera. Mommy. Daisy's younger voice answered. Yes, sweetheart. The little girl hesitated. Then asked. When I find my daddy, do you think he'll love me? The room went silent. Instantly. Anthony stopped breathing. The video continued. Daisy knelt beside her daughter. Of course he will. How do you know? The younger Daisy smiled. Because anybody would love you. The little girl seemed satisfied. The video ended. The room remained silent. Anthony looked away. His vision blurred. Because somewhere out there, a 4-year-old Diana had been wondering if her father would love her. While he spent that same day believing he could never have children. The cruelty of it was unbearable. Absolutely unbearable. A small hand touched his arm. Anthony looked down. Diana. Present-day Diana. Watching him carefully. Concerned. Daddy. His throat tightened. Yeah, princess. The little girl climbed into his lap. Then hugged him. Without hesitation. Without embarrassment. Without fear. Don't be sad. That was all she said. Yet somehow it nearly destroyed him. Because children had a way of fixing broken hearts without even realizing it. Hours passed. Memory after memory. Story after story. Anthony learned everything. Daniel's first obsession with books. Diana's love of animals. Damien's first attempt at starting a business. Apparently he'd tried selling leaves. To neighbors. At age 3. Anthony laughed until tears filled his eyes. Did anyone buy them? Daisy smiled. 3 people. Damien nodded proudly. Repeat customers. The room exploded with laughter. By evening, the boxes were empty. The photographs scattered everywhere. The children asleep nearby. Anthony sat quietly. Holding one final picture. A family photo. Daisy and the triplets. Taken years ago. Before he knew they existed. For a long moment he simply stared. Then Daisy sat beside him. The house was quiet now. Peaceful. Anthony looked at the photograph. Then at her. Then back at the photograph. I missed everything. The words came out quietly. Broken. Honest. Daisy's heart hurt. Because he wasn't angry. He wasn't blaming anyone. He was grieving. Simply grieving. She placed her hand over his. You missed a lot. Anthony nodded. The truth hurt. A lot. Then Daisy smiled softly. But you're here now. Anthony looked up. Their eyes met. And for the first time, the loss didn't feel quite so overwhelming. Because she was right. He couldn't change the past. He couldn't recover 6 years. He couldn't erase 15 years of lies. But he could be here now. And maybe. Just maybe. That was the beginning of healing. Daddy's girl. Anthony Green had discovered something important. Very important. His daughter had completely taken over his life. And he wasn't complaining. Not even a little. 3 weeks after the truth came out, Diana had developed a routine. A very specific routine. One that Anthony had absolutely no control over. Every morning. Daddy, good morning. Every afternoon. Daddy, look what I made. Every evening. Daddy, can I tell you something? Every night. Daddy, good night. The little girl seemed determined to make up for 6 years in a matter of weeks. Anthony was more than willing to help. Daddy. Anthony looked up from his laptop. Yes, princess. Diana climbed onto his lap. Again. She'd practically claimed permanent ownership at this point. The little girl held up a drawing. Anthony smiled immediately. What is it? Our family. His heart softened. Instantly. Because unlike previous drawings, this one included 5 people. Not 4. 5. Anthony. Daisy. Daniel. Diana. Damien. Together. The sight nearly brought tears to his eyes. Again. He was beginning to realize fatherhood involved a surprising amount of crying. Do you like it? Diana watched him anxiously. Anthony immediately nodded. I love it. The little girl's smile lit up the room. Mission accomplished. Across the living room, Damien rolled his eyes dramatically. She's your favorite. Anthony nearly choked. What? The little boy pointed accusingly. She gets away with everything. Daniel looked up from his book. Then nodded. Slowly. Thoughtfully. Anthony stared. Even Daniel. Traitors. All of them. I do not have favorites. The children exchanged looks. The kind of look siblings shared when adults said something ridiculous. Damien snorted. A 6-year-old actually snorted. Okay. The disbelief was offensive. Anthony turned to Daisy. Help me. She looked entirely too amused. I'm staying out of this. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Later that afternoon, Anthony attended Diana's ballet recital. His first. And he arrived 40 minutes early. Because he was excited. Though he'd never admit it. The auditorium slowly filled. Parents occupied seats. Children prepared backstage. Anthony sat in the front row. Nervous. Ridiculously nervous. His grandfather sat beside him. Looking equally excited. Diana's performing. The old man nodded. I know. Anthony looked around. Then leaned closer. I brought flowers. His grandfather blinked. Then burst out laughing. You brought flowers? Anthony frowned. What's wrong with flowers? Nothing. The old man continued laughing. You've become completely hopeless. Anthony didn't even try denying it. Because it was true. The performance began. Children danced. Parents applauded. Teachers smiled. Everything went according to plan. Then Diana appeared. Anthony immediately forgot how breathing worked. The little girl looked beautiful. Confident. Happy. She spotted him in the audience almost instantly. Then waved. Mid-performance. The instructor nearly had a heart attack. Anthony waved back. Without hesitation. His grandfather laughed so hard tears formed. Afterward, Diana ran directly into Anthony's arms. Daddy. Anthony lifted her effortlessly. You were amazing. The little girl grinned. You really came. The words hit unexpectedly hard. Because hidden beneath them was something deeper. A fear. A hope. A question. Would he show up? Anthony tightened his embrace. Every future recital. Every graduation. Every birthday. Every school event. He'd be there. Always. That evening, Daisy watched from the kitchen as Diana proudly showed Anthony her participation certificate. For the 10th time. Maybe the 20th. Anthony listened with the same enthusiasm every single time. The sight made her smile. Because something had changed in her daughter. Something important. The uncertainty was gone. The searching. The wondering. The quiet sadness that appeared whenever fathers were mentioned. It had disappeared. Replaced by security. Happiness. Belonging. You've noticed too. Anthony's grandmother had arrived earlier and now stood beside Daisy. Watching the same scene. Daisy nodded softly. She needed him. The older woman smiled sadly. Children always know what's missing. Daisy looked toward Diana. The little girl currently sat beside Anthony explaining the significance of every sticker on her certificate. Anthony listened as though negotiating an international treaty. Daisy laughed softly. He adores her. The older woman nodded. He waited 15 years for a daughter. The statement lingered. Heavy. Meaningful. True. That night, Anthony tucked Diana into bed. Something he'd begun doing whenever the children stayed over. The little girl snuggled beneath the blankets. Sleepy. Content. Safe. Daddy. Anthony sat beside her. Yeah, princess. Diana hesitated. Then asked. You're not going away, right? The question shattered him. Completely. Because despite everything, part of her still worried. Part of her still feared losing him. Anthony leaned forward. Gently brushing hair from her face. No. His voice was firm. Certain. Absolute. I'm never going anywhere. Diana smiled. A sleepy little smile. Then wrapped her arms around his neck. Anthony hugged her tightly. Holding on perhaps a little longer than necessary. Because he meant every word. Nobody would take his children from him again. Not Victor. Not fate. Not anyone. And as Diana drifted peacefully to sleep, Anthony realized something. He hadn't just gained a daughter. He'd gained a tiny little girl who had somehow wrapped him completely around her finger. And honestly, he was perfectly happy staying there. Like father, like son. Anthony Green had made a terrible mistake. A catastrophic mistake. A mistake so severe it could potentially destroy civilization. He had given Damien an allowance. Dad. Anthony looked up from his laptop. The little boy stood before his desk. Hands clasped behind his back. Expression serious. Far too serious. Anthony immediately became suspicious. Yes. Dad. The tone grew even more serious. Dangerous. Very dangerous. Anthony slowly closed his laptop. What happened? Damien looked offended. Nothing happened. Lie. A blatant lie. The child practically radiated trouble. What do you want? Damien gasped. Dad. Anthony sighed. What? You always assume I'm planning something. Across the room, Daisy burst out laughing. Daniel nodded. Diana nodded. Even Anthony's grandfather nodded. The betrayal was unbelievable. 5 minutes later, Anthony discovered why. Dad, I'd like to discuss an investment opportunity. The room immediately went silent. Anthony stared. Damien stared back. Neither blinked. What? The little boy produced a notebook. An actual notebook. Filled with numbers. Charts. Drawings. Anthony suddenly felt afraid. Damien opened the notebook dramatically. I've conducted market research. Anthony pinched the bridge of his nose. Of course he had. The little boy pointed toward a page. Children like cookies. A fair observation. Then another page. Adults buy cookies. Also true. Another page. I like cookies. Anthony couldn't argue with the logic. So. Damien smiled. The smile of a future criminal mastermind. I want funding. The room exploded. Diana fell off the couch laughing. Daniel covered his face. Daisy nearly choked on her tea. Anthony laughed so hard tears formed. The little menace was pitching a startup. At 6 years old. Funding. Damien nodded. Confidently. Yes. 4 cookies. No. The little boy looked disappointed by Anthony's inability to understand business. For a cookie company. Naturally. Anthony should have seen that coming. Later that afternoon, Anthony made another discovery. A far more terrifying one. Damien negotiated exactly like him. Exactly. The same confidence. The same persistence. The same refusal to accept rejection. The same habit of turning every conversation into a business meeting. It was horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. Daisy. Anthony pointed toward Damien. Currently negotiating with a neighbor. Was I that bad? Daisy laughed. Worse. Anthony looked offended. I was not. The entire room disagreed. Immediately. Even Daniel. Traitor. Meanwhile, Daniel sat nearby reading. As usual. The contrast between the brothers fascinated Anthony. One created chaos. The other organized it. One talked constantly. The other listened. One ran toward trouble. The other calculated risk. Yet somehow they balanced each other perfectly. Like opposite sides of the same coin. Then something unexpected happened. A disagreement. A real one. Damien wanted to build a lemonade stand. Daniel thought it was impractical. The argument escalated quickly. Very quickly. Dad. Damien pointed dramatically. Tell him. Anthony looked at Daniel. Then at Damien. Then back at Daniel. A familiar feeling settled over him. One he hadn't expected to experience so soon. The feeling of being a father. The feeling of being needed. The feeling of helping his children navigate life. What does your brother think? Anthony asked. Damien frowned. He thinks too much. Daniel sighed. The famous Daniel sigh. I said we need a plan. Anthony smiled. Now that sounded familiar. Very familiar. Too familiar. For the next hour, father and son sat around the dining table. Planning. Discussing. Calculating. Diana occasionally contributed ideas involving glitter. Most were rejected. Respectfully. The result? A lemonade stand business plan. Complete with projected expenses, projected profits, marketing strategy, and contingency planning. For a lemonade stand. Anthony couldn't stop smiling. That evening, after the children left, Anthony found himself staring at the abandoned notebook. Damien's notebook. The little boy had forgotten it. Anthony opened it. Curious. The first pages contained business ideas. The second contained drawings. The third contained random observations. Then Anthony reached the final page. And froze. A simple drawing. 5 stick figures. A family. Anthony. Daisy. Daniel. Diana. Damien. Above them, written in slightly messy handwriting, were 4 words. My family at last. Anthony's vision blurred. Instantly. Because for all Damien's jokes. For all his schemes. For all his endless energy. At the end of the day, he was just a little boy who had wanted a father. A little boy who finally had one. And Anthony had every intention of making up for the years they'd lost. One memory. One weekend. One ordinary day at a time. Across town, Damien suddenly sat upright in bed. Oh no. Daisy looked up from her book. What? The little boy gasped. My notebook. Daisy blinked. The business notebook. Yes. Panic spread across his face. What's wrong? Damien looked horrified. Absolutely horrified. It contains trade secrets. Daisy burst out laughing. And somewhere across the city, Anthony laughed too. Because he was beginning to understand something. His children were all different. But each carried a piece of him. And every day he discovered another reason to love them. Bedtime stories. Anthony Green had faced many challenges in life. Corporate warfare. Family betrayals. Hostile takeovers. None of them compared to getting 3 children into bed on time. It's bedtime. The announcement was met with immediate resistance. Naturally. Not tired. Damien. Obviously. Anthony glanced at the little boy currently bouncing on a couch. Like someone who had consumed pure electricity. Really? No. The boy paused. Then corrected himself. A little. Progress. Tiny progress. Meanwhile, Diana was already half asleep. Curled beside Anthony. Thumb hooked around his sleeve. The little girl had developed a habit. A very specific habit. If Anthony was nearby, she wanted physical contact. A hand. A hug. A shoulder. Anything. The realization melted his heart every single time. Daniel was easier. Far easier. The boy simply needed a book. And silence. Anthony respected that. Because honestly, he understood. Dad. Anthony looked up. Daniel stood beside the bookshelf. What kind of books did you read when you were little? The question caught him off guard. For a moment he smiled. Remembering. My grandmother used to read adventure stories. Daniel's eyes brightened immediately. Of course they did. The child loved books. Possibly more than people. Anthony respected that too. A few minutes later, all 3 children gathered in the guest bedroom. A room that had slowly transformed. What began as a spare room now looked unmistakably lived in. Toys. Books. Blankets. Drawings. Evidence of children. Evidence of family. Anthony loved every single bit of it. Story. Damien made the demand like a king issuing orders. Anthony raised an eyebrow. Is that how we ask? The little boy sighed dramatically. The sigh of a deeply misunderstood businessman. Please. Better. Slightly. Anthony settled into the chair beside the beds. A book resting in his hands. The children immediately grew quiet. Something about the moment felt surreal. Beautifully surreal. Because 15 years ago he had buried this dream. Now he was living it. The story began. A simple adventure. A young explorer. A hidden treasure. A dangerous journey. The children listened carefully. Especially Diana. The little girl watched Anthony as much as she watched the book. As though reassuring herself he was really there. Really staying. Really hers. The thought both healed and hurt him. Halfway through the story, Damien interrupted. Naturally. What if the treasure is cursed? Anthony blinked. The book contained absolutely no curses. Daniel groaned. Diana giggled. The story continued. 10 minutes later, another interruption. What if the villain becomes good? Again. Not part of the book. At all. Anthony laughed. You should write your own stories. Damien considered this seriously. Very seriously. Then nodded. I will. Anthony silently pitted future teachers. Eventually, the interruptions stopped. The room grew quieter. Softer. Calmer. The children began drifting toward sleep. One by one. Diana fell asleep first. Her hand still wrapped around Anthony's fingers. The little girl refused to let go. Even unconscious. Anthony stared at her for a long moment. His daughter. His beautiful little girl. The daughter he'd dreamed about for 15 years. A daughter who somehow loved him despite everything. Despite the absence. Despite the lost years. The realization humbled him. Completely. Daniel followed next. A book resting against his chest. Glasses slightly crooked. Anthony smiled. The boy looked peaceful. Safe. Content. Everything a child should be. Damien lasted the longest. Of course he did. The little boy fought sleep like it was a personal enemy. Eventually though. Even Damien surrendered. His eyes slowly closing. His breathing evening out. The room finally fell silent. Anthony should have left. Instead he remained. Watching. Listening. Memorizing. Every tiny detail. Every expression. Every peaceful breath. Because he understood something now. The ordinary moments mattered most. Not birthdays. Not celebrations. Not grand gestures. Moments like this. Quiet moments. Family moments. The moments he'd spent 15 years believing he would never have. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Anthony turned. Daisy stood in the doorway. Watching. Smiling. The sight before her nearly stole her breath. Anthony sitting between the children's beds. Still holding Diana's hand. Keeping watch. As though protecting something precious. Something irreplaceable. Which, in his eyes, he was. You don't have to stay. Daisy whispered. Anthony looked back at the sleeping children. Then smiled softly. I know. Yet he didn't move. Daisy's heart squeezed. Because she understood. He wasn't staying because he had to. He was staying because he wanted to. Because after 15 stolen years, every moment felt valuable. Every second mattered. For several minutes neither spoke. The silence comfortable. Warm. Peaceful. Then Anthony finally looked at her. His eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. I used to wonder what bedtime looked like. The confession caught her off guard. Anthony glanced toward the children. A faint smile touching his lips. I used to imagine it. Daisy's chest tightened. Because suddenly she could see it. A younger Anthony. Believing he'd never be a father. Trying not to dream. Trying not to hope. Trying not to imagine moments exactly like this. His voice grew quieter. Almost emotional. I never thought I'd get this. The honesty in those words filled the room. Raw. Beautiful. Painful. Daisy stepped closer. Standing beside him. Looking at the children. Looking at the family they'd somehow become. Then she gently placed her hand over his. The same hand still holding Diana's. Anthony looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment the world seemed to disappear. No lies. No villains. No stolen years. Just two people. 3 sleeping children. And a future neither had expected. A future that was finally beginning.